want to welcome everybody to our fire tonight, where we sit around as men and we discuss all the things that are most important in this life, including the topics that are taboo. So tonight, we are going to be jamming. I'm here with my dear friend Jake Daybell, the fenster, who is usually in the command center on every one of our shows, and we got Duck now holding down the fort. We're going to be having a really open conversation about religion and spirituality. A conversation that I think more needs to be had of, especially in light of where we're at as a society, where it seems like so many aspects of our culture are just completely off the rails right now. And to me, it feels like we're a very lost people, floundering, trying to find our identity, find who we are. And we keep trying to solve for symptoms rather than getting to the root of the issue, which is always an internal issue, right? This world we're in, this interface we interact with is a reflection of what's going on inside of each one of us, individually and collectively as a society. So we're going to jump into that. And we also have a very unique perspective, all four of us here at this fire tonight, because we all were raised in the exact same religion, and I think we're all at different places in that journey where we're at right now in terms of religion versus spirituality. We were all raised LDS, Mormon, for those of you who are following the show, which is a very orthodox church. It's a very orthodox religion. And so we were going to just open this up for discussion. I want to ask you guys, pose the question, is there a distinction between religion and spirituality, or are they the same?
I definitely think there's a distinction. I mean, religion is kind of like an organization with structure, leadership, dues that need to be paid so that the organization can continue to move its way forward, whereas spirituality is something, in plain terms, somebody can, find anywhere, in your car, in the forest, with your family. I think it's more internal, while religion is more external. If that makes sense.
Yeah, something I'd add to that with that question, I, in my experience, have found in religion spirituality, and I have found spiritual paths or spirituality that have started to feel religious to me, if that's making sense. Yes, they're different, but I found through the rites and the organization and the structure and the ritual of religion, I found spirituality, my experience, within those. And also outside of religion, within just the spiritual path, I've found things that start to formulate rituals and rites, and I could see this becoming religious. And that's the big difference for me, is religion is structure, spirituality is free-flowing. And I always like to think of things as masculine or feminine energy. So the religion is the masculine, lists of do's and don'ts and ritual, and then the spirituality is more the feminine, free-flowing. You can find it in nature. You can find it in something that's not as structured or in boxes. And it's a hard question because our minds automatically go to dichotomy and verses, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy for us to think that way. That's how we've been raised to think.
That's where I went. I was like, oh, this
That's
is that.
Where,
this is
that's
this.
where I go too, yeah. And it's this versus that. And the truth is, I know a lot of people in religion that are living a spiritual path. And I know a lot of people that are in the spiritual path that are doing things very religiously, as in dogmatic, and they've lost the spiritual essence of actually what it was.
Do you feel like you need both? You're making this sound like the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, which we need both. Masculine, feminine. So with that, analogy, are you saying that both are required? Both are necessary?
Oof, that's a hard question. I can speak from, again, my experience.
That's all we're speaking. I mean, we're at the fire. We're experts that are not experts at anything. So at the fire, we're experts.
Yeah.
You just say
Exactly.
it. What do you think? Unapologetically,
Yeah, I think that you don't need both. I think people can find God in one or the other, but I think they start to get in their own ego and lose that alignment of will with God, start to get in their own ego when they start to go with one and look at the other like, oh, that's not the path to God. So as soon as they make that division of like, oh, this religion is,
So do
I'm
you
here.
do you think religion is a path to God?
I think it can be. I've had a lot of people die in my life who held on to a religion their whole life, and I felt them and saw them in their life walking, with spirit and with God, but they got the essence of the spirituality of the religion.
So they needed both.
Yeah, they needed both.
With religion, does spirituality need religion? So you're saying that religion needs spirituality.
Yes.
Well, I think we can all agree on that, because
Yeah.
religion without spirituality is the Pharisees,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
This is what they
The
were,
dog.
and they were the only people that Christ condemned outside of Herod in
Yeah.
the New Testament. Like, he was the only person that had negative epitaphs for, told them they were going to hell, sepulchres full of dead men's bones, the very religious who claimed to know him,
Yeah.
who then ironically ended up killing Jesus in his own name, in the name of Jehovah.
Yeah.
So religion,
We see it all the time now.
so religion, if I'm tracking, religion needs spirituality, spirituality doesn't need religion, so we don't need religion. Would that math add up?
Yeah.
I'm asking just for your opinion.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
I'm not pushing anything
I
here.
know,
I just
I know.
want to know what you're
I
like.
know. Yeah, I know what you're doing.
Kind of dig into this.
Yeah. No, I'm pondering it within like myself, because I see the value of religion in like ritual and rites of passages and things like this. And that is what I'm in my mind thinking is religion. But in terms of like the dogmatic view of this is the way to get to God, we don't need that. I'm always a proponent of there's many paths, one truth. There's so many different paths to get to God, and no one is to say we need this religion, we need this, ordinance, or else God. That's just not the nature of God to me.
Mm-mm.
God isn't going to be able to let you in because you didn't hear about Jesus, or because you didn't, that's just not a. If we're going through the metaphor of loving father, which a lot of religions are based around, that's not a loving father to me. And I don't believe any saint or sage, when you really look at what they taught, were teaching that. It was the people after that started to teach that.
Why do you think that we believe in a loving father? How come that's the character, where it could be a different character, a scientist? It could be an engineer. It could be a comedian.
Yeah.
Like there could be a
Could very well
million
could
different
be.
projections that it could be a tyrant, it could be something not what we would define as loving or good, right? And the reason why I'm asking this is because I think one of the things that gets to the heart of both spirituality and religion in my mind is ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever that is, it's a projection. Whatever our definition of God is, or the divine, is either our own projection, our own ideal version of ourselves. Like, what's the best version of all the things I hold value to, and then project that onto a being that's infinitely better than me? Or is it, and then in spirituality, it's kind of the same thing. It's like projecting your own internal energies and stuff, and we create, or it's the projection of others, right? Like our parents, or a dogma that's been passed down through centuries, and now we've inherited that as our framework for approaching the divine. And the reason why I'm kind of asking this, and I'll open it up, is we say God is a loving father, right? And I think it's easy to say that, and almost everybody's going to agree with us, right? Because that's kind of what we've all been handed from various religious lenses, or what we think would be ideal, is that there's somebody that really loves us on the other side of this experience, right? And all these things are happening for our good. When we project a concept like love, we have such a minuscule understanding of what love is, right? So we project that onto a being that we don't understand, that's so far above our comprehension, that could create this conscious state, create all of this complexity, these different perspectives and paradigms. We project a very limited understanding of a principle onto a being that we have probably no understanding of, really, ultimately, in the big picture of things we don't understand or comprehend. And so we will say God is a loving father in heaven. And then what I've seen happen often is that people, when their projections of God are not met, then they are mad at God. Mm-hmm. Because they've created a God that's not acting the way they created that God. And an example of that is, we say God is love. Well, I love my kids. I would never let my kids go play with a child molester. Ever. I would never let a child molester be near my kids. God sends his kids to child molesters every day. And he allows that to happen. I don't understand that love, if that is love. It's a concept that's beyond my ability to grasp. And I think this is an issue because people will say this, the big pushback on religion or God from atheists is like, well, the number one argument is why would God let bad things happen to good people? This is kind of the thing people just kind of knee-jerk reaction. There can't be a God because bad things happen to good people. Hey, if you guys are sick and tired of taking supplements that really don't move the needle in your physical fitness, go ahead and check out my new company we just launched, No Name Supplements. No name, no bullshit. What's in there is exactly what it claims to be. Everything we produce is tested, and you'll see phenomenal results from using it. So go hit it up and use my discount code right here in the caption to get 10% off your first order.
Well, I mean, we're not in heaven right now, so bad shit's going to happen regardless. But I think going back to your original question about why people kind of place the title of Father upon God.
And I do the same thing, by the way.
Me too. And it makes total sense to me because from my understanding of my studies, we were created in God's image. And so he kind of looks like us. But
can I peel that back? I'm interjecting. I know
go for it.
Your studies have been handed to you by somebody else who's come up with that, right?
Yeah, up until I would say like a year or so ago, yeah.
Well, what do you mean by so did you have a witness of God a year ago?
No. I said I kind of have leapt out of the initial programming that I've been used to. So I'm not just referencing like LDS doctrine here. This is just kind of like what would make sense to me is if the Bible is correct and when it says that we were made in God's image, the first kind of thing that we have here is a family. We're born into a family. We have a father and we have a mother. And that's kind of like the first thing that we have. And there are caretakers, and they take care of us because we can't, as humans, do anything until we're like a year or so old. To me, it would make sense that we would deem him as a father figure because naturally in masculinity, the fathers are the leaders of the home. And if God is the leader of our soul during this sojourn here on earth, it would make sense to me that God would be like that father figure. And if, all of us here are fathers and we know what we feel about our kids and what little we do know about God, we know that what you were just talking about, love, is just super hard to even imagine and talk about because we don't know very much about it. But if he did love us as a father did, and you times that by whatever being a God is, I mean, yeah, that hierarchy just kind of makes sense because that's how we congregate on earth.
You see, you're making my point though, because you are projecting your values.
Oh, 100%. I don't think there's anything that we can do when it comes to our concept of God without projecting, right?
That's kind of my point.
Yeah.
So when we talk about religion or even spirituality, ultimately we're talking about projections from us onto something else that we don't understand. And I think it's important to get to this because I believe, I consider myself Christian, but because of the last few years of how I've evolved, I do that because I hope it's true. I no longer have any idea whether it's true or not. Mm-hmm. And so there's probably a lot of Christians out there who would listen to this or hear me talk and be like, this guy's a heretic and he's going to burn in hell or whatever. And that's really why I'm bringing up this whole conversation, is because so many people go around so certain of things. Yeah. And I think certainty is actually the enemy that's spiritual death.
Yeah.
As soon as we become certain, we know we've got this figured out about God. And so many religious people are that way in all walks of life. Or if you're certain there is no God or whatever, whenever we get to a place where there's some sort of certainty, like we've got that dimension figured out here, like we can make these claims about it, I think it behooves all of us to step back from our convictions and say, okay, I believe these things. Ultimately, I have no fucking idea whether they're true or not, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I may want them to be true, and I do. I want them to be true. I want Christianity to be true. I read Jesus every single day. I read the Gospels on repeat over and over again. I pray. I find a lot of value out of that. But it's been good for me to step back and say, okay, those are things I'm choosing to believe in because I want to believe in them, not because it's empirically true or that I can prove it.
Yeah.
Isn't that what faith is, right? Like you're believing in something and hoping for something that you can't exactly see, but you want it to be true, and you act as in accordance as if it is, right?
Yeah, you just have to be careful that your faith doesn't become that you're thinking you are certain.
Yes.
And and you're asserting it onto other people. To speak about like that, just that metaphor of the father, mother, in my journey as I started to find other spiritual paths and got curious about them first, opened my mind, and it was more just curiosity at first, and then found God there. Just want to give a shout out to the metaphor, really, of the mother God as well. Because where we were raised, all of our projection is going to be very masculine based. It's going to be very patriarchal based, right? We're in a patriarchal society. And that, I think even mentioning like a mother God to a lot of Christians and a lot of other people, or a heavenly mother, is like, what?
Yeah.
No, that's not in the Bible. But I loved how you said the family resonates with us so deeply, and there is the father and mother, but we've eradicated the mother, the feminine, from our perspective, from our religion, from our, really, society in a lot of ways. So I think just having the curiosity for me, the open-mindedness and then the curiosity, has enabled me to experience what feels different than my projection. And it's really uncomfortable at first. Like every single time that I've came to a crossroads of like, oh, this feels true. This feels like how I used to define God, but it's completely different. Every single time I get to that crossroads, it's the uncertainty. It's the, oh no, it's the, okay, I need to really pray. I need to really like try to remove all of my lenses, perceptual lenses, all of, what my ego is clinging on to see, is this an essence, God, or some other thing, my imagination. And I think the only way to do that is to then take the steps through the crossroads. And that's what most people, I think, have a hard time doing in terms of expansion of their spiritual or religious perspective, is actually being curious enough to take those steps, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, it's all metaphor. It's all in like a lot of the Buddhist texts, it talks about the ineffable. God is the ineffable ultimate reality. It's just something that we'll never understand, which I think there's some value to that. And I also think that that even can limit us if we can't ever build a relationship with something that resonates with us, like a father or a mother or Christ or something that we can define. Then it makes it really hard to for me build a relationship that my brain can understand. So again, I see that dichotomy.
So this is going to sound like heresy, and it's just my internal workings as I've separated myself from the religious dogma that I was committed to my entire life up until about 40, right? I was all in on the rituals, on the practices, on the authority, on the dogma and the doctrine that was taught there. It is a very uncomfortable place. When I started to like ask questions and kind of, from my experience, it felt like waking up out of a deep sleep, like into a new way of thinking, a new form of spirituality. There was a lot of people, even close to me, that thought that I was just taking some easy path because religion celebrates obeying all of these rules, right? Follow all these rules. And so the programming is that if someone's falling away, it must be because they're sinning or something like that, and they're a bad person on some level because they're no longer following all the rules we're following. Mm-hmm. So I got a lot of pushback, and understandably, I understood it because I would have been in their shoes a few years prior to that. I got a lot of pushback, a lot of people telling me I was taking the easy way out, and what they didn't realize for me on my journey, that was the hardest thing I've ever gone through, next to going through a literal divorce, was my divorce from the church and the doctrine. I still go, love the church, see a lot of value in the collective idea of us gathering together and having community and having a value system that we come together on. I think there's a lot of pragmatic value to it. I don't think it's the way. I don't think it's the path back to God. I just think It's an organization. But I do the same thing that you were saying, Sam. You're projecting your feelings about a family onto a divine being. What I've done is my journey has led me to try and think of what is the most inclusive theologies for everybody down here. What applies to everybody? And again, this is projecting. I understand that. So I'm in the same boat as everybody else, trying to kind of figure this out. And so if I say what's good for everyone, not just one special group of kids that got the special sauce that God really likes and everybody else is having some sort of second-class experience. Yeah, I'm the special kid. I mean, and let's be honest, religion really does sell two things. They sell certainty and they sell exclusivity. Those are like the two big things. Like, we're going to tell you what's going to happen. If you pay us money, we're going to tell you you're the special kid and where you're going to go. That's kind of the big selling points, and people want certainty in their lives. But breaking out of that into this place of nuance has been very uncomfortable and also extremely liberating and healthy for me, from my perspective, my very limited perspective. But I've tried to find things that make sense for everybody. And so in that vein, like, one of the things that is a characteristic of God, as I project that, is that God loves diversity. That everybody has a very, very unique genetic structure that's theirs and theirs alone. Nobody else will be structured exactly like them. Or has or will be, and that everybody has very unique perspectives with the experiences that they have. Very, very original, perceptions of the world that is going on around them. And so to me, God must love diversity, and this is a big heretical thing to say to the religious, because the religious is like, no, you're not on my team, so
right.
you're not winning, I am. You need to, and I need to save you, or something like that. And I don't see that. I think if there's a God that really is the God of all of us and created this, then there's some value in the diversity of human experience, whether that's economical or historical or racial or religious or not religious or whatever. Like, everybody's perspective, to me, has to have some intrinsic importance, value.
Yeah.
And that to me completely overturns the claims that religion, not the religious experience. People can have great experiences in religion, but the claims that religion makes, that there's one path back to God and we're it.
Yeah.
And I think there isn't. I think take that one step further, where my mind goes with this is, if that is true, if what I'm saying and projecting is accurate, then maybe it's not really externalizing God anymore. Maybe it's kind of what Christ was teaching, that the kingdom of God is within each one of us. And that the healthiest relationship that we can have is actually the relationship with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that we are God's. We are divine. Our conscious state makes us that. And that as we evolve and become more and more authentic and more honest, that we're becoming closer to the divine.
Yeah, and there are some teachings that I love that have that same message. I like to think of it as a puzzle, where every piece is part of this full picture of what God loves, the diversity, right? And coming back to him. And what we're doing is we're holding on to a puzzle piece, and we're saying all these other puzzle pieces don't fit. This is not true. These puzzle pieces need to be, but they're all part of the puzzle. And that doesn't mean that your puzzle piece, if puzzle piece is right, doesn't mean that puzzle piece is wrong. Mm-hmm. They're just all part of that same puzzle coming together. So any teachings that resonate with me are ones that promote this unity, really, of opposites sometimes, of differences, bringing them together and synthesizing them. And a lot of people have that experience where they have to leave religion to go to a spiritual path, where they have to leave their old spiritual, where they thought they were spiritual, and join a religion in order to round themselves out within, when really it doesn't mean one is right and one is wrong. One of the biggest favorite idea is one of the biggest issues with religion, where we get off, is when we get more concerned with being right than being good. Religion's purpose is to be good. It's not to be right or wrong.
But I disagree with you. I think religion's purpose is to be right. I think spirituality's purpose is to be good.
I get what you're saying there. Like, that's where religion falters, right? When the imperfection of it. When they say they need to be right or wrong. But I think true religion, like the point, and I think my projection, my perception, as I've traced back even the roots of like our church that we were raised in and other religions, is a lot of the leaders that started religions or churches had this idea of this is what it is to be good. And then, like I said, even with Jesus, the people that followed started to say, oh, well, this is right and this is wrong. And it started to get really cumbersome with just human thought and discord and division and right and wrong. But I think the point of it all is to be good. And that's kind of to the point of, like, you can find within religion spirituality. And that's where you start to realize that it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong and that you actually don't know, like you were saying. And it just matters, am I a good person? And am I developing these soul qualities? Am I feeling the fruits of the Spirit in my actual day-to-day life? One of the most profound things that Jesus said was, by their fruits ye shall know them. And those fruits to me are good thought, good feeling, good action. It's not anything to do with right or wrong or the dogmatic view that we get lost in a lot of the times.
I share an experience. I'm going to share the experience. All three of us were, and back in like 2021, 2022, we were in Nepal. And I had like one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had in my entire life over there. And I'll just relay that briefly. I think it might be a good discussion point. Coming from the religion that we were raised in, you're raised knowing that there's one authority and we got it and nobody else does. And so anybody else trying to project their authority on you, it's wrong. And they were taught certainty around that topic. Priesthood authority is just super vital to, handing out, these experiences and ordinances. But when we were in Nepal, we went on this hike, like over the course of 3 days. And the first day it was just a bunch of stairs, and I was a lot fatter than I am now. And I was like, damn, that was like 1.5 miles, 2 miles of just stairs, and I'm like done. And they're like, yeah, tomorrow's like 10 miles. And you're going up and down a mountain and up another mountain. And I was like, oh, okay. So my porter is like, you need walking sticks. If you're going to do tomorrow, you got to find some. And I'm like, all right, let's find some. And so we start walking around this little tiny village that we're in, and we find some, like just leaning against a fence from somebody's little hut. And he's like, these are somebody's, they got them and they, shaved them down. Let's try and buy them. I was like, okay. So we knock on the door, and this lady answers, and we're like, are these your walking sticks? Can we buy them? She's like, yes. I'll take 2 rupees for them. And I was like, well, I'm going to give you more than that. That was like 2 cents. I gave her like the equivalent of like $15 or whatever. And she started like crying, and she was like talking to my porter, who was then talking to me, and basically saying like they'll be able to get like a water filtration system for their house, and they're going to be able to like eat really well for like the next month or so with the money that I was able to give them for these just walking sticks that I was going to need for my journey. And when that happened, she's like, I'm going to pray with you. And she like put her hand on my forehead like this. And she started saying this prayer, and Bebek, my porter, told me afterwards kind of this summary of what she said. And it was basically, the journey you're about to go on is going to be hard for you. And it's not going to be hard for a lot of the people around you. And you're going to have your family members from the other side like help lift you through your journey. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. That's profound. And I kind of didn't think a whole lot about it, because I was, coming from this other place of my religious views and dogma. But I was on this journey, and it was near the end, the last 1.5 miles, my legs were locking up. I literally couldn't walk. And Cam was behind me, like pushing me forward. Because if I stopped, I locked up and I fell over. It was terrible. And I remember this prayer that she was saying and what Beck told me. And I'm like, praying like that there would be some truth to this. And then all of a sudden, it felt like there was like 20 hands on my back. And my legs weren't stiff anymore. And I was able to just walk freely. And I finished it like without somebody pushing me. And I turned around because we got over this little hill and we started walking down these stairs into the little town that we were finishing in. And I turned around to look up kind of where we came from. And at the top of the ridge, the sun's setting, I see like 15 people standing at the top of the ridge. Like I saw it with my eyes. And they all looked to be like similar aged to me. And when I was kind of putting two and two together, I was adopted, and my adoptive mother had tried to have children so many times and couldn't, and she had 14 miscarriages. And it was immediately like impressed upon my heart, like, those are your siblings from the other side, and they just helped you finish this thing. And that was a really, really like break open experience for me, getting out of the dogma that I was raised in, because that happened across the world with somebody who believed in completely different ideals than I did. And they prophesied that would happen, and it happened. And I don't know how to explain it, but I look back and I saw people that had pushed me. They weren't from this realm, but I saw them and I felt them, and it was real. And that was kind of the point where I started thinking, like what Adam's been saying, like maybe being certain about everything isn't the way. And that was the beginning of my journey to like find more truth and seek for that instead of holding on to what's comfortable.
That's so profound, bro.
Yeah, that's a cool story. You've told that before. That was an awesome trip. We were all
never heard that story.
Yeah, it's important. So I'm going to go to Jesus for a second. I think this is going to tie in a little bit with what you're talking about. So Jesus, the pretext for Jesus being killed is what? They're killing him because he's a threat. So let's be honest. The religion is threatened by Jesus because he's anti-religious, at least at the time. I believe that's how he always is. I don't think Jesus was religious, and I don't think he intended us to create a religion 400 years after his death at some Council of Nicaea under a pagan emperor, according to Christians, for political reasons. I don't think that was what Christ had in mind.
And then go kill all the natives.
And then go kill all the natives. And I think this is going to get me a ton of flack. I'm a Bible-reading guy, and people can make their judgments on me and can tell me I'm going to hell, and I understand where it's coming from. I won't be offended, but I think Christianity has created a lot of idols. And one of the idols that Christianity, my church that I grew up in, certainly has, and one of the idol of Christianity is the Bible. So a book that was compiled out of numerous records and was, voted on by various people on what books were going to be included, which weren't, and how to interpret them and such. People will say the Bible's the Word of God. That's all you need. And the problem is, for me, fundamentally, is that that's never taught by Christ. Christ never once referenced the Bible. If that was the end-all to what he was going to say, then you would think he would say something. There's going to be a book that's going to be gathered together 400 years from now, and that's it, guys. That's all you need to do. That's all you need to know. That it doesn't exist. And so you have to just take this dogma that kind of came out of thin air that was created at this time period, and people worship that now, essentially. That's totally off topic. So
that's a good topic, though.
We can dive into that in a second. I'm riffing on what Sam's story, where that led me to go with this, is the reason why Christ was killed wasn't because, he wasn't because he called himself the Son of God, but that was the pretext they used. They killed Christ because he was a threat to them. He was challenging their authority. He was challenging the institution, the laws that they'd come up with, and this system to be saved through. But their pretext for killing him was because he said he was the Son of God. And interestingly, he gets in a debate earlier with Pharisees, and he says, how are you condemning me for being the Son of God, saying I'm the Son of God, when in our own scriptures we teach that we are gods? you're calling me bad because I'm the son of God, but we are gods. Ye are gods. And I think he was quoting Zacharias. I can't remember the exact scripture from the Old Testament that he was quoting to the Jews, but one they were very familiar with. And that has always resonated with me. Christ is teaching us that we are divine. And the phrase that got him killed was the two words, I am, which was basically saying I am God, right? Like I am the same level as God. I create, I exist, I'm eternal, I am. And that's what they used as their excuse for blasphemy and worthy of capital punishment. What I think happens a lot with religion, and certainly in the church upbringing that I had, was that we were taught that if we had spiritual experiences, it was because of this church, right? Mm-hmm. So if you read the Book of Mormon and you felt something spiritual, then it meant everything was true. It was a validation for everything. If you went to the temple and you felt spiritual experiences, then it meant the church was true. If you're a church and you felt spiritual experiences, then it meant the church was true. And that was one of the things that was kind of pushed back to me from people who love me, but from the religious point of view, is that you've had spiritual experiences here. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, of course I have. I've had spiritual experiences in the temples that the LDS Church has created. I've had spiritual experiences reading the Book of Mormon. I've had spiritual experiences at church. Mm-hmm. But I've also had spiritual experiences in Hindu temples. Mm-hmm. I've had spiritual experiences on mountaintops. Yep. And I've had far more spiritual experiences outside of a religion. And so I think this is one thing that religion does very manipulates very well with, is that they are able to hijack these spiritual experiences and claim them as their own. What I think is actually going on, this is the best I can come up with rationalizing it, so it's clearly not going to be perfect in any level, but that because I believe what Christ said is true, that we have divinity within us, that we are God, we are part of God's essence, we are one with him, that we have the power to do what God does, which is to create. And so we can manifest all kinds of things, miraculous things in our lives, wherever we're at, whatever religion you're at. Because when my family says, hey, you've had spiritual experiences here, this church is true, I'm like, yeah, but Muslims have had spiritual experiences. Hindus have had spiritual experiences. Buddhists have had spiritual experiences. So those don't count. Just ours are the special spiritual experiences. How do you argue that point that spiritual experiences inside the halls of a particular church makes that church true when every group of people is claiming the same thing? They're claiming miracles. They're claiming oracles that speak for God. They're claiming spiritual experiences. They're all having these same experiences. And what I believe is true is that if we approach something with the intent to find the divine, mm-hmm. we will. Yeah. Whether it's in a temple, whether it's in a church, whether it's on a mountaintop, whether it's in your office studying, wherever that's at, that we manifest our own realities. We create them. And when we have that intention to find something divine wherever, we will more than likely find that, especially if we're really pure in that intention. Yeah. And I think that applies to every aspect of life, that we have the ability to go and create our own realities and our own perspectives, and we get to manifest these things, and we'll find validations for the perspectives that we choose to pursue.
Yeah, and I think my mind just goes back to speaking on Jesus, what he was saying about the fruits. It's really easy, I think, for the ego to come in when you're searching for the divine and be self-affirming rather than open, rather than just being able to accept these fountains of truth that are coming in from other areas. And
Do you think
the other scripture that I thought of real quick to finish that thought? No, you ask me, actually. Ask me what you're going to ask me.
Do you think spiritual experiences are external or are they internal? In other words, is there something that's coming from outside of us in terms of epiphanies or light, or has that always been inside of us? And I don't know the answer. It's not a loaded question. I'm asking.
I think it always has to originate from within. I do think there is a being or beings that are farther ahead of us on the path that can come into the manifest. And so in that way can be external. Mm-hmm. But I think it's always an inside job. You have to get clear. You have to have that pure intention. And you have to accept the miracle. That's all that Jesus was teaching, right, is our own divinity, that you can have God contact. when he left, he told his disciples, yeah, the Spirit's going to come and you're going to do greater things even than I. And those verses are so overlooked in the dogmatic religious view because it's, I think, scary to accept our divinity a lot of the times. Like that's a lot of responsibility on us, that we can be our own creators. It's much easier to be a victim to the circumstances or to the world or to what God wishes for our life.
Well, and it's ironic, but it's heresy. So if you say this, particularly in mainstream Christianity, this is heresy, which is interesting because what's missed in that is that's exactly why they killed Jesus.
Yeah.
So religion today has fallen into the exact same trap as the Pharisees of old, right?
Yeah.
You guys tracking with me?
Yeah,
Where it's
and the
like,
Pharisees were
if you
discrediting
claim now,
Moses.
you're talking about having divinity within you and having God consciousness within you and having divine, and you can connect directly to God. The religious will condemn you and throw stones.
Yeah, and I think the fear, because religion is very fear-based. One of the main fears of that is, like, oh, if you're calling yourself a prophet, that lady's a prophet, you're a visionary if you saw a visionary man, right? And throwing stones at you. People are so scared of the pride aspect of it. But and that there's going to be no accountability. If you claim yourself as divine within, you're going to have no accountability to anybody else, and you're just going to be a tyrant and rule. But that's not the true essence of claiming divinity within. All of the Eastern philosophy is that the way that you claim the divinity within is total accountability for your thoughts, your mind, your emotions, your actions. And it's just a model versus the Christian or the Orthodox Christianity model is we'll always be deficient. Christ is always above us, God's always above us, and we're never going to actually be like him. Joint heirs, that scripture, don't know how that got in the Bible, between Christ. That's not true because we're deficiency model. In the Eastern philosophy, the model is an ignorance model. In other words, we just forgot. We don't know. We're ignorant of the divinity that is actually within. So we're growing into dispelling ignorance, which is actually, that is the term for guru, is you're dispelling darkness to actually come into your light and into your divinity and into God contact within. And it's not done through a prideful way or trying to ascend in some, egoic way, but it's just done with this perspective of, oh, you're actually, God loves you and you can be just like him, and you just have to dispel this ignorance or this darkness to self-realize, rather than this deficiency model that's the Orthodox Christianity of you'll always be deficient, and good thing Jesus did what he did. And speaking my own beliefs, I do believe what Jesus did was very important, and it was part of his mission, and he unlocked a certain level of consciousness and a blueprint for us to actually follow to become self-realized like he did. But then he also said, follow me. He said, this is the way. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the light. This is the way. You can do exactly what I have done. You don't need to. You don't need to do exactly what he did, as in he showed us the perfect example of love and forgiveness through his death. That was his mission, as him being the perfect avatar that he was, the perfect blueprint for us to follow. But he was inviting us to follow him and to do even greater things than he did. And I don't know, it took a long time and really deep study to actually get over that, because those imprints of that I'm deficient, those imprints of like I'm never going to be able to, at least in this life, rise to who God needs me to be. I'm always going to be falling short, and then I'll die, and then Jesus qualifies me. That was a hard imprint for me to release in order for me to be like, oh, I can actually follow exactly as Jesus did, and not as a self-righteous way, but as a way just like he did of serving others, right? Becoming self-realized or however you want to call it, so that I can then do what he did for others, help others, right?
That's exactly where I'm at, dude. Like, speaking of my soul right now, I feel like I am trying to break away from the shame that is perpetuated by religion. And I think that's one of the downfalls is if you're not following this Pharisaical list of do's and don'ts, then in some way you're falling short of the glory of God, and you have to fix it right this second. And it's led with a bunch of shame on the forefront. And that's tough for me, because when we go back to talking about our projection of God being an all-loving, encompassing Father, you know, I know if my kid makes a pretty big mistake and then comes to me as the father and says, like, hey, like, what do I need to do? I'm not going to hammer down on them in that moment of weakness and vulnerability with shame. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't create growth. It creates fear, and it creates religious trauma. And so that what you were just saying is like right where I'm at. I'm trying to break free of that, but I haven't quite yet, because I'm still like in this space where like almost I feel like I'm 1 foot out, 1 foot in.
Yeah.
And it's mostly because of it's what I know.
Yeah.
And it's what I love.
Oh,
and it's hard.
It's deep too on the conscious and subconscious levels of how tied energetically. It's a cord.
Yeah.
You're tied to that. If I could share some things that helped me.
Please.
With and obviously we're all still on the journey. I'm not saying like, oh yeah,
I made it.
I cut the cord. Yeah, no. No, I'm just saying things that have helped me is really claiming the I ams. You mentioned how Jesus said I am, and that was one of the biggest reasons why they crucified him, because he was claiming I am Yahweh, right? Jehovah, I'm essentially God within. And so claiming that for yourself, I ams, which you hear this in a lot of the personal development spaces, as well as like I am affirmations, but it's so much deeper and spiritual than that, and actually rewrites a lot of the subconscious to, instead of associate your mistakes with shame, associate your entire identity with I am. Whatever you're affirming, I am, a son of God. I am a follower of the good of Christ. However you want to frame it, but really rewriting those has helped me in constant affirmation, like constant prayer. And prayer is affirmation for me at this point, like a lot of it. And then the other thing that I just want to point you in the direction that has helped me. A lot of the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas, there's a lot of quotes from Jesus talking about how sin is a human-made concept, which
I've read those.
Well, that was where I was actually heading. So I've read the apocryphal writings. I've read the Gospel of Thomas.
Sophia.
So, and maybe we're not further off than, maybe we're tracking on the same journey, but as someone who claims to be Christian, I claim to be Christian for different reasons than what mainstream Christianity would claim to be Christian, what their definition of that
That's
is.
a good way to explain it.
So they would say that to be a Christian, you have to see yourself as lost and fallen and broken, and that Jesus saves you. And that's Christian. And I think it's different than that. I think Christ's fundamental mission wasn't to suffer and die for our sins. I think it was to show us the way. It was to teach the truth. I think that was it. And that's, since the dawn of time, truth tellers are always martyrs. Whether they're canceled in our culture, modern culture today, or shot, like we saw it last week, whatever it is, the people who tell the truth are generally not accepted by society. And I think Christ was that. He came and taught the truth. The Christian religion has basically created the problem and then justified the religion in creating the solution, right? They've said, you're bad, you're fallen, you're lost. Every time you sin, there's some sort of like demerit that gets stuck on your records in heaven. And the only way that can be expunged is to kind of proverbially flog yourself enough and scream Jesus loud enough, and then you can get those demerits taken off your report card or whatever. And it doesn't rationally make sense to me as we make our own projections. My kids, I have 5 kids, a 5th one on the way. I have 4 kids, a 5th one on the way. They do things wrong all the time. I don't feel like there's some debt that they owe. I'm not sitting there tallying that up and saying, well, when you finally get to the point where you're ready to, ask for forgiveness from me, I can wash all of your demerits away. It's just part of the human experience. And I think that was something Jesus was fundamentally trying to get people to wake up to. You're not, cast off. You're not lost. You're going through a profound experience here in this life that is intensely important to you. And part of that process, a big part of this process here in this world, is to go through suffering. Like, suffering is the teacher. You're going to fuck up. You're going to screw up. You're going to get it wrong. That's totally okay. You're not bad. You're just having a human experience. I think of the woman caught in adultery. She gets brought before him, and they, want to stone her. And he says, ye without sin cast the first stone. And when they leave, he looks at this woman who has been caught in a horrific sin, and he says, I don't condemn you. Just go be better. Go learn from it. Go level up. Like, that's kind of the whole point of life. It's like a video game. Like, you got stay alive as long as you can and go level up. Go learn from your experiences. And I think that's what Christ was teaching a lot of things. And I think his death was actually a metaphor for us, that we are redeemed through suffering, that we are reborn through our own suffering. We are resurrected through our own suffering. The Puritans had a doctrine that I think was profound called the regenerative descent, which was that you could only ascend to the depths that you had descended, right? So you had to go on this hero's journey. You had to go into the darkness. You might get lost. There was a real risk in this. Like, it's not a guarantee. Like, you can get lost in feeling sorry for yourself or victimization or whatever else, excuse making. But if you keep going, that darkness becomes this catalyst, that suffering becomes this catalyst for a rebirth into a much higher conscious state. And I know that to me, that's like the law of gravity. That's something that I can sink my teeth into because I've experienced that all the time. Like, the greatest joys in my life have almost always universally come from the greatest sufferings. Even think of it in the metaphor, not even a metaphor, literal sense with a child. A woman goes through horrible, we got modern medicine that helps stave this off, but goes through horrific, carrying a child for 9 months and all that does to him, and then goes through horrific labor pains to deliver this child. And there's this new life that comes out of it. To me, that's like a metaphor of how powerful suffering is. And I don't think Christ was saying, hey, I've come down here to pay your debts and remove your suffering, because if he did that, he would remove the learning. He would remove the development that is required of us to progress in this power-evolving universe. Like, we need to evolve, and we can only evolve through suffering. And that makes sense to me, and that answers the retort from the atheist, why does bad things happen to good people? It's because it's not really bad. As horrific as it may seem from our very limited perspective in this life, all the terrible things that we can see happen to us or happen to other people, without that bigger picture, those things are good for us on some fundamental level, individually and collectively.
Yeah, that's a hard doctrine too, when you think about what people are like actually going through.
Yeah.
When people are actually like, why is this happening to me, or in something way worse than what we've had to experience in our lives. Something else that reconciles that question originally, I forgot, we didn't fully answer it, but it can't be answered. But another idea is this idea that if I believe that God created us to have agency completely. And so the things that are happening, the bad things that are happening to other people, is that person's essential, I don't want to say godhood, but agency, divinely given, that cannot be controlled. God doesn't try to control or conform all of his children. He represents diversity, and everyone has the ability to choose. And so it's taking the person and being like, oh, God wouldn't let this happen, but really God has no control over that person's agency. And so that's another point to me of like why suffering is here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our responsibility to use our agency to then transcend that suffering, or to grow through that suffering, to allow it either to break us or to build us. We become better or we become bitter. And that is a theme across all religion, spiritual paths, is this vehicle called suffering is here for a divine purpose, but you have to choose to allow it to be used in that way. if that's making sense.
And if any of this content resonates with you, feel free to come check out our community, our brotherhood. It's called Doughboy Nation. I would love to see you there. We have these types of conversations every Sunday. We sit around the virtual fireside, and we talk about all things that are taboo. We talk about all things that really matter in this life with an open mind and with an open heart. There's no dogma. There's no expectation for everybody to agree. In fact, we value diversity around the fireside, so long as it's authentic and it's truthful. Hope to see you there.
Boom, boom, baby. Boom, baby. There's
It
a lot of
does. And I-
divisiveness, I think, with this because of the religions, at least from my understanding and upbringing, when good things are happening to you, it means that you're righteous and you're doing good things and you're acting well. And then when bad things are happening, it's, you must not be doing stuff right.
But I'm going to take that even further, because in religion, that one of the hypocrisies of it growing up in my religious system was that if bad things were happening to me as a good religious person, it was God testing me and it was a trial for me to evolve from. But if bad things were happening to other people, it's because they were making bad decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was good for me wasn't good for them. I was being tested because I was God's divine, but they were making bad decisions.
Yeah, that's you took the words right out of my mouth. That's really how I feel about that situation, and I see that now, still going and attending, and being an active participant. It's hard for me to separate those now that I've seen it, and I'm just like, I'm not gonna let you make me feel that way or try to project that onto me. And so I think that's a really great first step of unlocking my own spirituality, because I think part of the issue of, these two topics, religion versus spirituality, is together they can really be powerful, especially if you're using it the right way and you're very self-aware and you have a good relationship with yourself and your discipline. But the problem that I'm having is so often it feels like I'm being taught the opposite, and that doesn't feel, in my soul, it doesn't feel right. Like, what feels right is what we're saying here, which is that things are happening for us to learn and to grow and to latch onto and to see a different perspective, not to create a fear complex where we're like, oh man, if this is happening to me, it must be because I'm not acting in accordance to something of God's will. And I know on my side of the aisle on this podcast, it may feel like I'm just like coming at religion really hard, but it's mostly because like now I'm not afraid to ask the questions now, and I am.
Yeah.
And it feels really good to start getting answers and pieces and bits from God in my soul, because that's how it kind of happens, is he just like unlocks a little piece and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes me feel better, and I understand this a little bit more. But it's definitely a process, and it's definitely up to me to go seeking for that truth and to find it. Because if you're not, you're just going to be stuck in this echo chamber of, well, if you do this, this, and this, and you just keep doing that forever, you're good.
So I'm going to go back to, because I think we differ on all this. This may be where I differ from you guys, and it'll be good to get a little, if we have some debate in here.
Yeah.
'Cause right now we're all just agreeing with each other, sort of just weighing these ineffable concepts out,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't think religion is the answer, period. Like, I just don't. I think religion can be a valuable tool for people.
Mm-hmm.
I think religion for me is like second grade or first grade. That's what it is. It's a tool for the very basic rudimentaries. The ball is red, the ball bounces. But if you start asking why the ball bounces, it's like, well, we don't know the answer to that, and we don't need to ask those questions. We just need to know the ball's red and it bounces.
Yeah.
This is kind of like religious sort of dogmatic teaching. I'm just dumbing it down, when to take recess, what you can have for lunch, what kind of homework you have to do. And that can be very helpful for a lot of people. I can see that as a tool. We do that with our children. We give our children structure. But ultimately, they have to move on into their own lives and make their own decisions to develop and become a real adult and have a real human experience. They have to start making their own decisions and learning from them, and they have to try things out and test things out. And this is a really hard thing as a parent to let go of. And I think this is kind of some of the reaction from religion. If we take out the whole corrupt side of religion, if we just look at it altruistically, is it's hard to let your flock go out and then go figure out for themselves. It's like, no, stay safe, stay safe. Jesus didn't ever tell us to stay safe. The human experience isn't about being safe. It's about growth and development, and that only comes through hardship and suffering and challenges and learning and growing. And a lot of growth comes from making a lot of mistakes. And but I think religion, to me, is like second grade. It's very helpful for a time and season in their life, but the problem with it is that religion tries to keep you stuck in second grade. So if you start asking deeper questions, if you start pursuing more knowledge outside of the curriculum assigned in the religion, you're in a very dangerous place at the very least. And if not, even further, you're a heretic. You're an apostasy of some level because you're moving past this second grade curriculum. But I think ultimately, if you want to progress, you have to leave behind second grade. You have to be able to, whether you still use it as a tool in your life, it can't be the source anymore for everything, all the decisions that you make in your life. You have to start going beyond the second grade curriculum into spirituality, and you have to start working out your own salvation with God, with fear and trembling, not through some middle management source that tells you if you're worthy or not, or tells you what God wants you to do with your life or not, or tells you what rules you have to follow. And I want to just share one story. I'm a little long-winded on this, but it was a very difficult process for me to separate out of the religion, as mentioned earlier. And there was a number of factors that started that process for me. One of them was going through a divorce, and one of them was COVID at the time. The way the church handled COVID was very difficult for me because I knew I wasn't getting that shot, but they were pressuring us and gaslighting us to get it. And then you find out our church had hundreds of millions of dollars invested in the companies that they were telling us to get the shots from. And to me, that just seemed like obvious corruption. I couldn't face up to that, right? Because I was so like, nope, just this is a test of faith. This is somehow on me. I'm a bad person because I'm questioning these things, like that's how I had that ingrained. But that combined with some other factors, meeting my wife that I'm married to now, she played a part in that. But, I had been raised, one of the rules that we'd had as a church, a commandment even, that if you broke it, you're essentially going to hell, was that if you drank, you were bad because you weren't being obedient. And so I didn't drink my whole life. I drank a little bit in high school for a few months, messed around with it, and then my entire adult life never touched alcohol, ever. Well, I'm having these kind of existential crises in my life with a divorce and other things, and I'm like reading the scriptures, and I'm getting kind of a different lens this time. And I'm reading Christ turning water into wine for his first miracle at a party. And not only does he make them wine, he makes them the best wine they've ever had. He's like, you guys want wine? Let me give you some good wine. These guys are like, most people save their wine, the best wine, they save the worst wine for last. You've come out with the best. This is amazing. And so I'm thinking, how can a church that I'm a part of attach eternal consequences to something that clearly isn't an eternal law? Because here's Jesus, and not only is he turning water into wine, but he's accused by the Pharisees of being a wine bibber, of ingesting wine. And Jesus is like, well, which one is it? You condemned John for not drinking, and you're condemning me for drinking. So where do you guys land on that? And of course, they can't answer. So I'm having this thing where I'm like questioning for the first time ever in my life the authority structure of the church, the middle management. And I'm reading here as an example with Christ in the New Testament where he's doing something that clearly is condemned now by our church. And so I was with my wife on a trip down to, on a trip to Mexico. We were at an all-inclusive resort. And I made this deal with God. I was like, look, I'm going to drink tomorrow. I'm not drinking to have fun. I'm not drinking because I'm curious. I'm going to test this out. Like, I'm having a problem right now. All the different things that are juggling around in my head right now about what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what isn't good. I'm kind of boiling it down to this. Is drinking bad or is it okay? Right? Like, because I got to find something just simple that I can latch onto. Like, if it's bad, then I'm kind of leaning back into the church. If it's not, then this opens up a whole different pathway for me, right? And I'm trying to sort this out. And I said, tomorrow, I made this deal with God. I was praying to him. I said, tomorrow I'm going to drink. This is like 4 years ago, so it's recent. I'm like, I'm going to drink. And the next day I did that. I drank all day, had a great day. It was fun. And my engaged with my wife, talked to people, had just a great day. We had no responsibilities. I didn't do anything wrong. Went to bed that night, slept like a rock, got up the next morning at like 5 a.m. I'm down on the beach. I'm the only one down there. The sun's not even up. It's just kind of like that haze as the horizon's starting to turn gray. And I go into this meditative state, and I'm like praying, sitting on the beach, like talking to God. And I'm going to ask God if what I did was wrong. You know, I'm going straight to God instead of the middle management, instead of somebody who's God's mouthpiece for me, you know, which is heresy. And so I'm doing something that I'm really like feeling like I'm way out in left field. And I really genuinely thought when I got down on that beach to pray and talk to God that he was going to reprimand me. I didn't think it was going to be severe. I thought he would just be like, son, you know, you're not supposed to do that, right? Da, 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 da. And so that was my expectation. But I did my breath work. I tried to clear my head, my soul, and then I tried to have a real honest conversation with God. It was one of the top 3 most spiritual experiences of my entire life. I was sitting on that beach asking God, did I do something wrong yesterday? And that will determine where I go. And I don't know if I've ever felt so much unconditional love as I felt on that beach. I just felt like God was just poured this love onto me. And I heard a voice in my heart, in my head. It wasn't audible, but I heard it, felt it. Son, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't drive drunk. You didn't beat your wife. You just were having a human experience down there. And you did nothing wrong. You're fine. You're right with me. That was it. That was all I got. And it was this really profound, I was probably there for like an hour, hour and a half in this beautiful exchange. Like I felt like it was external. So when I was asking earlier about internal, external, I don't know the answers, but this felt profoundly external. Like it was coming from outside of me.
Yeah.
Like this love was surrounding me and coming down. It wasn't generating from within. Was my perception.
Yeah, you mentioned you cleared and you were able to receive. I think that's part of it too.
I was taking it really seriously. It wasn't a flippant thing. It wasn't like I'm just going to go drink and have fun just for the sake of it. It wasn't that. It was really to me like this test of, do I go directly to God and get answers and accept the answers that may contradict all of the programming and all the dogma that I've gotten? That was a huge act of faith for me. Now other people listen to this and be like, oh, that sounds like a cop-out. I shared this with my bishop. I was trying to explain to him where I was at spiritually and like how I was evolving, and I had this conversation, and I told him this, and he was like, yeah, I don't believe that. This is personal one-on-one conversation. Exactly. Almost for like, I'm not even like embellishing anything. He's like, yeah, I don't believe that's not true. And I was like, I wasn't offended. Yeah.
Well, he was love. Yeah, Satan was love, I guess.
They
that
can
day.
mimic it, but he didn't say Satan, but he just said no. He just totally dismissed it.
And invalidated your whole experience. That was so impressing on you.
It was so impressing on me. I wasn't offended by him at all because I understand the religious mindset, but it just showed me, like that actually interview that at the afterwards with my bishop months later, when I told him this experience, it just showed me the contrast between what real spirituality looks like and what being bought into a system and worshiping a system looks like. What the difference between the Pharisee way of thinking and the open to any possibility, open to God, open to divinity, open to your own journey and your own experience and your own answers. I totally believe God could tell people not to drink. That's like, I think one of the things that's really difficult in a religious sense, right? In a spiritual sense, is God has told me not to do certain things. Mm-hmm. And then the problem is that we then try and project that onto other people. Well, God told me this, so what's right for me must be right for you. What's wrong for me must be wrong for you. And that's where religion really, I think, gets it wrong. Is people may have had some sort of guidance or whatever, and now they're trying to force that on everybody else. Whereas alcohol doesn't have a hold on me. I'm not an alcoholic. I honestly don't even really ever drink. Occasionally, socially now, I will go and drink a little bit of wine or something like that. It doesn't have a hold on me. But maybe if I had been inclined to become an alcoholic or use it as a way to stop growth and development, maybe God would have told me a different answer on that beach. Mm-hmm. You know, he may have been, son, you don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm open to that now, where God communicates to every one of his children. He meets us right where we're at, and his answers in his communication with us is going to be unique and different because we're all so dang unique and different. And I think we got to stop trying to force everybody into some sort of cookie cut mold to all think the same way, talk the same way, act the same way, hell, Hitler the same way, and instead be open to everybody's unique journey and experience, so long as it's authentic and honest. I think that's why Christ said, I'm the way, the truth, and the light. Because I think the real crux on all of this is whether you're going towards the truth or whether you're going towards the lie, whether you're going towards self-deception, self-justification, whether you're, projecting your own ego, whatever that looks like, or whether you're open to any possibility out there, but you're open to it. And you're going to accept the truth as it comes.
Yeah, that last half I agree with. The first half of the second grade would you say that that's like you saying religion is second grade? Because for you it was, for you had to have this evolution, and that experience was real and part of your spiritual development. But to then say that, oh, religion is second grade and you have to leave it, period, isn't that using your experience of what you had to do in order to develop your relationship with God and further on your evolution, just taking it and being like everyone or religion as a whole now is second grade?
I don't think so. That's a good question. It's a good pushback. I don't think so, because I genuinely don't believe religion saves anybody. So at the best, religion is a tool. That's what I do believe.
I think
And it can be an effective tool. It can be, I'll give you a second, just a second. It can be an effective tool for people of various walks of their life. And I'm not telling everybody they have to leave, but I think at the end of the day, if your belief system says very emphatic, dogmatic things that are not true, or only grasp a very small sliver of reality, you have to move past that. So if you think God is a white man with a beard like Santa Claus that hands out carrots for good kids and sticks for another kid, and you hold on to that your whole life, I think that's a very limiting belief at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean it doesn't serve you, right? That doesn't mean it doesn't have value to you and gives you some value to your life. Mm-hmm. I just think it's very, very limiting. And I think the dogmas of all religions that I've come in contact with, I don't think you can reach full potential and spiritual growth adhering to somebody else's idea of what God is, because that's what religion is. Somebody else came up with that idea, right? They wrote it down somewhere, and then we started worshiping it as God's word, and then it became ours. And so I think to really come to God, you have to break out of the molds that you have ultimately. I do believe that.
Yeah.
Does that resonate, or am I off? And then you can take over, Sam.
No, I resonate with it. In my words, I would say you have to come to a sovereign space where you're really the authority and the connection to God, with no other dogma, idea of anybody else's clouding your vision, right? You are now have that testimony in and of yourself and connection. Where I differ is I see people in religion not adhering to the dogma. Maybe they're following the rules, maybe they're staying within, the rituals their entire life, but they have those fruits of the Spirit, those soul qualities of love, peace, joy. They're good to their family, they're good to everybody around them, and they did it through the lane of religion. And sure, they have ideas about God being a man or someone up in the sky, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. I don't think that's the point of our spiritual evolution. That's all just ideas and who's right and who's wrong. I think the point of religion and spirituality is to come to that sovereign space, connect with God, and I think you can do that through religion. And it's funny because we agree, like my path, I felt like I did need to leave the dogmatic, and a lot of those hindrances for me were I need to go into these other spiritual paths, where I went into the yoga path and I went into the plant medicine path. And I actually just had a conversation with my bishop, like literally 2 weeks ago. That's funny you brought up that experience, where I laid out everything and the why of everything with plant medicine and how I've seen it change lives and help people and help my life and my relationship. And he was very open-minded to it, and then went to the stake president, and the stake president didn't even want a meeting with me. It was just like, no, that's a no. And so I took that as like, hey, I'm not going to continue my spiritual evolution here, because I have a what feels like a connection to God telling me to go and help people in this way. Mm-hmm. And that could have been one of the reasons why you had the feeling God told you, yeah, you're good to drink, and you're good to.
And he didn't even tell me I was good to drink.
Yeah.
He just told me I
Yeah.
didn't do anything
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
was literally the only answer. Like,
Yeah.
no, you didn't do anything wrong.
And to that point, I think that nothing you do or not do is, especially when you're talking about commandments or you're talking about, is black or white, right or wrong. It really is your intention behind it, and we could talk about that all day.
Oh, that's a whole long
that's
conversation. But I think we're kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I think what I'm saying is, and it's not even to throw stones per se at religion, although religion is an easy target for it, is that it's to say that religion is essentially somebody else's perspective of God handed to you.
Yeah, but I also
Right.
believe that you can.
But then you're talking about spirituality, which I agree within.
Yeah.
So tell me if I'm off on track in this, but within religion, you have all different levels of spirituality. I believe people can be very religious and very spiritual, for sure.
Yeah.
They can go one and the same, but I don't think religion is the answer. Nor do I think religion is what develops higher levels of spirituality. I think religion can give a base, right? Again, like a second grade analogy, like there's a value to it. People can develop in spirituality while being in a religion. I've experienced that. I've seen that with people. So I think we're saying the same thing. I just don't think, what I'm saying is religion is not the answer, whatever it claims to be.
Yeah.
That's not the pathway back to God. It may be a catalyst for growth. It may be a tool that's useful for you to govern your life and to create structure, which is very healthy.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have religion to create structure, right?
Right.
Like, so it's just a tool. That's all I'm saying. Religion is a tool and where religion gets it wrong is when it tries to say you have to have this tool, which again is kind of second grade analogy. You have to stay in second grade. This is what gets you there.
Yeah.
That's where I do think that's just not accurate.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a kind of a gray area for me.
Yeah,
right?
it's limiting, and our evolution can, and I think should supersede that, like you're saying. And the people that don't feel called to on their path, I think they're getting to the same place. That's, I think, the only difference that we have in our what we're saying.
No, we're agreeing on that. I don't think people have to do what I'm doing to find the pathway back to God, right?
But they have to deconstruct.
I think they have to find God outside of somebody else's interpretation to continue to grow.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
They have to find it for themselves, the sovereign man, like you said. They have to find their own connection.
Yeah.
And
Which you could do in religion,
yeah,
but
but religion isn't the source of that, is what
No.
I'm saying. So that's where I think we're
it's
actually
essentially a container.
correct.
Right. And if you get, this is one analogy I'd like to share real quick from the Bible, actually. When you think of the golden calf, Moses goes up into the mountain and everybody starts building a golden calf, and they're actually doing exactly what Moses taught them to do when you build an altar space, a religious space. They're even performing, if you read it, a lot of the same things in the exact same way that is okay to do. But they start to turn their attention and their devotion to the actual thing between them and God. And then you see the same children of Israel stranded in the desert, all getting bitten by snakes, all suffering, dying, and they fashion another idol, or the cross with the snake. And Moses is telling everyone, if you look at this essentially idol, it's not God, but this thing that we fashion, that man has created, and if you look at it, it's going to heal your wounds. And some believed it and some didn't. So in these two instances, you have a symbol, which is all religion is symbols and metaphor and rituals and rites. But in one instance, they're condemned for it. Moses comes back down the mountain. He's like, why would you worship a golden calf? You're supposed to worship the one and only God. And this other instance is like, look at this snake on this cross. It's going to save you. But it's because they were looking through the symbol to God. Whereas with the calf, they were looking and they were stopping at the symbol.
Jordan Peterson has a really interesting take on this.
Yeah.
And I actually like a line with this. He says that the snake that they hold up, it's a metaphor. It represents what they're afraid of. So they're terrified of these snakes. They're underneath their tents. They're in their bedrolls. Their kids are getting bit.
Like that, yeah.
And he says the way that we are saved, and he says anybody who is worth their salt in psychology knows this, the way you overcome your fears is facing your fears.
Yeah.
And so it's actually not to be held up as a symbol of God. It was to be held up as a symbol of their fear. Face your fear, and you can be saved. face your fear and you can overcome it. And those who couldn't face it were destroyed by their fear. And those who could face it were liberated.
That's deep.
It's pretty deep,
Especially when you think about our conversation with deconstructing. If you're afraid to look outside of your roots or your religion, that's the fear, right? Even if you're feeling called
Well,
there.
and the number one admonition commandment in all of the scriptures is to fear not.
Yeah.
Like, that's the great enemy. And then religion seems to peddle fear everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very, like you've mentioned, a very fear-based system. And so, again, going back to my perspective on whether religion is necessary or not, at best, it's a tool in my mind. And it can be a very effective tool.
Yeah.
I still find value out of
Yeah.
religion. I still go to church.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a completely different person when I go to church now. You know, it's I'm looking at it as a tool now, and sometimes the tool is helpful, and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
And I try to make those I try to make those distinctions
Yeah.
in real time. Like, oh, that wasn't helpful,
Mm-hmm.
but that actually was great. I'm
Yeah.
glad I went to church. Like, that was
Yeah.
good. Like,
Yeah.
that was nonsense.
Yeah.
Like,
Claiming that, like, freedom, that sovereignty.
yeah, exactly.
You're sovereign.
So that's what I think you can be, to be whatever saved is. And I don't think saved is an event. I think it's, we create heaven and hell within ourselves, right? And salvation comes through progression. I think that's what Christ was trying to teach us. Christ clearly was anti-religious. He broke all their rules. He taught people things outside of their dogmatic beliefs. He tried to show them the way, like, you're not going to be saved through religion. You're going to be saved through the truth.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent religion has that, great. To the extent it doesn't, it's a stumbling block for you, right? And so it's a very imperfect tool at best in my mind, and I think that's in harmony with what Christ was trying to show us and teach us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do hold religion as like a second grade sort of thing, and maybe a better analogy for it or metaphor, but that it's at best a rudimentary tool. But what really matters is our personal spiritual progression.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's not the essence of how we are going to progress. Because I also think of the people that live their entire life spiritually and connected to God, and then towards the end of their life find a religion and they get just an outpouring of feeling of closeness to God and peace and joy and love, and they convert to that religion. Who's to say that that was maybe the tool that they were missing?
Well, what's interesting, I want to jam on this, and then Fencer, I think you need to jump in because you were going to say something earlier, but I've always thought this was super interesting with Christ and his miracles, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times Christ performs miracles and he just says it and it happens, a healing or whatever.
Yeah.
He just commands it and somebody's healed. Or even in the case, I think it was the Roman centurion that was like, you don't even need to come to my house. My daughter's sick, or servant. I can't remember what. I can't keep all the healings in, straight in my brain, but
Yeah.
you can just command it, and I have faith. And Christ commands it, and he's not even there. And there he goes home, and it's like, yeah, on that hour that your child or servant, again, I can't remember, is healed. Other times, he has to do something. Either it's probing questions, like, do you have enough faith? I do, help my unbelief, and that helps to garner and foster this faith in the individual.
Yeah.
Right? That's a tool. That sort of question and answer helps bring them to a place where they can have the faith to be healed. Other times, with one blind guy, he spits in the mud, and then he rubs it in the guy's eyes, and the guy is able to see. Another person, he tells him to go bathe. But other people, he just heals without anything.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of like a metaphor for religion. It's like religion can be those tools to spark somebody's faith. Going to the temple, for example, for LDS people, it's a big part of the culture, is a tool like the spitting in the mud.
Yeah.
It's not intrinsically necessary. Right? But it can be a catalyst for your spirituality because you go there and you use this tool to increase your faith and increase your intention.
Yeah.
That's how I look at religion. It can be that for people. It can be that catalyst, but it doesn't have to be. And it wasn't spitting in the mud that healed the guy's eyes.
Right.
It wasn't bathing in the water that healed him. It was the faith that promoted in that person to be healed.
Yeah. Yeah. And final piece on that is, because I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's just the tool for themselves to, by your faith you are whole, right? That's every time someone would praise Jesus, he'd say, no, this is by your faith you are whole. Making that distinction, like it's not even me. It's not me doing this. It's you, and you're having faith in something bigger than your sickness or your doubt or your fear.
That's good.
I think the second grade thing, the only thing that I think about is people can go past second grade within a religion by using one tool, like using the temple tool. I just know people that I feel like I wouldn't say like they only have this level. I think it's hard when we just put levels or hierarchy in like the spiritual path and assign like different value to different tools. As long as we can get to that essence of like, no, this is you growing your relationship with God, and it's on you. It's not on the tool. It's not on the staff. It's not on the prophet. It's not on, which can be heresy, but
We're saying the same thing, bro.
yeah. I know I always knew we were, but I like to play devil's advocate.
That's good.
I just have, I have kind of like 2 points, and then I'll let you close out because we're like at an hour and a half.
We can go too, right?
But I think especially like where we're at in the world, like where society has developed to this point, religion has become kind of like an enemy, or it's not as useful to people anymore on a large scale. I mean, you see people just leaving religion in droves, especially the Gen Z. I mean, they don't have any use for it. Moving on to my second point, with that comes a spot where there's going to be people who are on all different ends of the spectrum spiritually. And so you could have like somebody over here who's like a little infant who has nothing, no base to ground off of. And then you could have fellows like ourselves who are very introspective, who are very theological and trying to find purpose and meaning in life and in the abstract and the reality that we're currently in, who are asking the tough questions and finding that path and the process to getting there. And with that spectrum, I think, going off of your second grade comment, I think like it's going to be hard for somebody who's never had spirituality or religion in their life to find God without an introduction. Whether that's like a, near-death experience or a missionary knocking on your door. As I had so many experiences serving as a missionary for the LDS Church where I just couldn't believe how ignorant people were to just Jesus himself, and they just knew nothing about him. And so while I see your point, Adam, it's also hard for me to conceptualize that because it seems like every man for themselves. It's like you're on this journey on your own, and you're not going to have any help and support because religion's not the answer. And you need to figure this out. Well, if nobody has the tools to figure it out, they're not gonna, and they're gonna just be stuck kind of where they're at. Like I've got a friend who's an atheist, and he left the church that we were a part of, but like since then spiritually he has done no growth. And in fact, I would argue, and he's a close dear friend of me, but I would argue that he's declined as a person because of that fallout with God and religion. And so I guess it's not that I'm disagreeing with you. It's just I'm questioning and I'm wondering, and I want to hear your response on this. As somebody who is on that like infant end of the spectrum, it would seem to me that, like what you said, that religion is going to be a good starting point for them to figure out who God is and why he is and where they need to go. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to stay there. But when it comes to just like religion building spiritual confidence, like teaching you how to pray, teaching you how to commune with somebody you can't see, are all like really basic things that we take for granted, but people who have never done that before are frightened. I can't tell you how many lessons I was in as a missionary where people were like, I don't know how to pray and I don't want to. I'm uncomfortable with that. And so for me, it's like, man, for fellows like us, yes, I agree with what you've said. But for people who don't have any skin in the game currently, I feel like maybe the only introduction would be a religion. But I'm interested in what you think about that.
Well, that's kind of my point. Second grade is kind of one of those steps, or first grade, or whatever the grade is for religion. It's a foundation. So I agree. I think, and I do think there's a lot of value in religion, especially collectively. I was in a debate with an atheist just recently on social media, and I was like, the only thing worse than government is no government, right? That's the only thing that's worse than the government. And so, like, I have seen both. I've seen people that have left religion and their spirituality has skyrocketed. And I would say I'm one of those. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel way healthier now than I've ever felt. And religion wasn't a bad experience for me. You know, I didn't leave because I was offended. I didn't leave because I was like, I hate this. I left because I was like, I don't believe the claims anymore because I can't rationalize them. I got to be honest with myself. And the things that the church is claiming aren't adding up for me, right? But my dad made an analogy one time. He was talking about careers, and maybe this applies to the discussion we're having about how important religion is in your life. He was talking about his son-in-law, and he's like, stay on the boat you're on and don't get off unless there's a better boat to get onto. But don't just throw yourself overboard into the ocean and then float around on a life raft because your life's going to get really bad really quick. He was trying to tell his son-in-law, keep working, don't quit your job because you don't like it. Stay on the boat until there's a better opportunity. You got responsibilities, you got stuff to do, right? I think that applies to religion. Like, if you have a better way of structuring your life and you can see that, then maybe leaving behind, it doesn't mean you even have to abandon it, but moving on from religion can be very liberating and very freeing. But if you just throw out all the structure in your life, whether it's religion, whether it's a system of values, whatever it is, you just throw it out for nothing, for a hedonistic lifestyle, just to be like, I'm going to just do whatever, my pleasure feels like doing, your life is going to go downhill really fast. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people, especially people who get angry with God, is they get mad at God, so then they throw God out of their lives entirely, and with that goes their entire life structure. And now they're just pursuing pleasure, and they're just pursuing what's easy and what's accessible, and of course their life is going to go to shit. But I've seen the opposite, and to be honest with you, I've probably seen more people that have left religion where it's been a catalyst for greater spiritual growth than those who have left religion and they just fell apart. But I have seen both.
And I think sometimes when people leave, they feel like they have to swing to the other side of the pendulum just to be able to deconstruct what they were given within their religion. So that's why you get a lot of the anti-Christians and anti-Mormons and people that are so like hateful to the religious side because they just woke up to being able to like think and feel for themselves. And so they feel like they have to swing on that side. And then you get the argument from people in religion like, oh, you leave the church, but you can never really leave, never leave us alone. Really, I think it's just the ego's way of deconstructing. Like, I need to make somebody a villain. Mm. But when you come back into balance is when you realize, like, wait, maybe this wasn't the villain. Maybe this wasn't the right, like, maybe I can just come to this place where these are all tools and nothing's just black or white. And yeah, I think it's really hard for closed-minded then to open, to not make the enemy out of what you are leaving, right? But I think it's really important for your own peace and your own happiness to do that. And as you leave, to cultivate, because it's true what you said, a lot of the younger generation, like I think the study you might have referred to, like majority are leaving structured religion. I don't think that's as important as long as you're cultivating a desire to find God, to seek God, to love yourself, and really working out your own salvation in the terms of it's not outsourcing to any other organization, but it's something that's really within, building that kingdom of God within.
Now I'm going to say something kind of maybe almost contradicts everything that I've been saying up to this point.
I love it.
I think one of the huge problems that we have right now in our society collectively is the remove of people leaving religion, because it's not being replaced with a higher or better structure. And so we're seeing a lot of hedonism. We're seeing a lot of nihilism. We're seeing all the symptoms of a people that have completely lost their way. And so as limiting as religion is in my mind for ultimate growth and progression, if you just stick in religion and you don't have the spiritual component to that takes you beyond it, it's structure, right? Our society is built on Christian values, right? And to the extent that we as a society hold to those Christian values, we are far healthier than the secularism that we're seeing right now, in my opinion. So again, I fortunately, when I distanced myself, I was very angry with my particular church for a while because I'd felt like I'd been lied to. I felt like I had, the only way I know how to describe it is I felt like I'd been spiritually molested. Like I was like, dude, I'd bought into this. These guys are not what they claim to be. The things that they're teaching aren't what's claimed to be. It's not true. And this is my opinion, right? My experience. So I was really like, part of the processing was to be angry. And so I was angry for a while. But I had enough sense to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Not to be like, well, let me just get rid of all structure and let me just go out and, freedom and go bag hose and freaking get drunk and do a bunch of drugs and just melt my life down with no structure. I was able to have enough sense and common sense to say, there's so much value that I've gotten from my religious upbringing. I don't regret any of it, right? So even though I was angry processing it, I also recognized I had a lot of gratitude. It was a strange place to be where I had a lot of gratitude for my religious upbringing, for my second grade. It gave me so much structure. And I fortunately didn't throw all of that out, right? I was like, I need to find God for myself. I need to find God without middle management for me to progress. I can't just keep outsourcing my critical thinking and my spirituality to some dude because he outlived another dude in a quorum. I've got to own that, and that's got to be my own journey. But there's still so much value for me in this church.
And that's where I think that the danger is, right? In this whole conversation we're having, I guess, spirituality versus religion, is that I don't think people are equipped with the knowledge and the tools that we may have with our critical thinking to not spiral into anarchy when it comes to their religious views and their spiritual views. And so I think while this is going to work for people like us who have this background of critical thinking and can make decisions and can be disciplined and be self-aware, I think is the big one. You're going to have a lot of lost people out there that are just angry, upset at the experiences that they did have in religion, and they're going to chalk it up as both. They're going to say religion and spirituality, same thing, and it was terrible for me. And so I'm still on the fence here, in the middle, because I'm deconstructing in one sense, but in another sense, I'm just there's still so many things about it that make sense to me in my brain, where it's just a tough place, and it's been a wrestle. It's been a true wrestle, man. And my wife's job is with the church. She's got to have an active temple recommend to keep her job. Wow. That kind of thing. It's, there's outside pressures aside from just what should I be doing spiritually and religiously. And so I appreciate your guys' perspectives on this, because it has been eye-opening and helping me to kind of process the feelings and the experiences that I'm currently having and I'm currently in. Because now I'm in a spot where it's well, what do I teach my kids?
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
And it's my first mind's thought is teach them the plan of salvation. And I'm it makes sense to me. But is it true?
But they need structure.
Exactly.
They need structure, they're kids.
And so taking her to primary and having her learn about Jesus via the songs and the simple lessons that they teach, I think is really valuable. And that's why I think church could be a really good thing for people, is, to teach their kids in a simple way that's not super combative, well, depending on the religion.
Yeah.
But anyways, I appreciate you guys' viewpoints, and kind of my journey where I'm at is still, open for a lot to happen.
And for the record, I'm not Jesus. I'm not telling anybody to follow me. Right?
I don't think you're Jesus.
Good. Well, I didn't think you thought that either. I'm just saying Jesus said follow me. I'm not saying follow me, right? I'm just putting out thoughts that are going on inside my head as honestly as I can. And then if it feels like it lands with people, invite them to consider that. You know, that I do believe, going back to kind of our original start to this, that spiritual certainty is spiritual death. You know, you have to be open. And you said something earlier, Sam, about figuring it out. Like, how am I going to figure it out? I don't think you do. I don't
makes me feel so good.
This is a tough thing for me, right? This is the thing I wrestle with because I want so badly to figure it out, but I don't think you do. I think maybe we do draw closer to the mountaintop, closer to the truth. I don't think there's any arrival at the truth, at least not in this life, in this dimension that we're operating in. We can experience truth. We can peel back layers as we peel back our own self-deception, our own lies, our own ego and stuff. We can start to be more open. Maybe somebody has. Maybe Jesus was that one that had it figured out, and that's why he said, follow me. I don't have it figured out, and I don't think I'm ever going to figure it out, but I'm never going to stop trying. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the point, is you keep working at it. You keep trying. You keep trying to understand, level up, get a new perspective, a new way of thinking, open to all possibilities. But you're never at a place where you're like, put my stake in the ground. I got it figured out, guys. Let me tell you, everybody, this is how it is.
Which is hard because that's what religion, that's one of the constructs that we adopted, right? Was you've got to know. If you don't know, you got to put your stake in the ground. But feeling okay walking in the spiritual path is really just releasing all those expectations, right? And then what's helped me is just judging every thought, every feeling, every, where am I going to go action, cast it with, is this fear-based or is this love-based? That's the, like, day-by-day ins and outs of what, as I'm walking, I'm trying to think of. Like, okay, what do I teach my girl this that she just learned? Is it fear-based at church or is it love-based? And not being afraid to contradict even the religion that you're bringing them to. And teaching them, like, oh, yeah, that was that guy's opinion.
I've been doing that.
Yeah.
I've been doing it. She came home and was saying some stuff the other day. I think it was about the word of wisdom or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is where I need to step in and say something.
Dude, that's so good.
And I did, and I said something, and she goes, oh, okay. Like, I get it. And she's just so innocent and ignorant and wanting to learn and wanting to grow in that sense. And she loves Jesus, dude. My daughter just loves Jesus. And I love that because I love Jesus. But, I think this is a really healthy conversation for guys out there to have, especially guys who are wrestling with where they're at spiritually. And do I need to keep going to this church, or is there something else out there? And yeah, there is. There's also your church, and it's okay to keep going to that, and it's okay to, raise your family around a community that is like-minded and a believer in Jesus. But I think Adam's whole point is, and I think your whole point too, is taking the middleman away and creating that direct, hard line straight to God instead of letting somebody kind of develop that for you. So I appreciate your thoughts. This is a good discussion.
And I'm going to take something one step further than that, just for me. I don't believe, again, going back to the initial where I'm at theologically or spiritually, I'm trying to find things that make sense that include everybody. I don't think knowing Jesus is the point. I love Jesus. I read Jesus every day. I have never found a better framework for how to live as a man or greater wisdom than I find in Christ's teachings in the New Testament. So I follow him. I would call myself a disciple of Jesus. The vast majority of people that have lived on this earth have never heard of Jesus. How do you say Jesus has to save you if God made a world, and for most of the history of that world, not only had they never heard of Jesus, most people had never heard of Jehovah or anything else. Jesus, to me, is a symbol or a metaphor for the truth, for authenticity, for being honest, pursuing that which is noble and that which is healthy. And we title that Jesus and we follow Jesus. And I'm not even saying Jesus isn't the way. I'm just saying the name Jesus is different for other people in different cultures, different religions, different times in history. They didn't say Jesus. It meant something the term was something different. But I think it all meant the same thing, the pursuit of the truth. And that's what Jesus showed us. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Life comes through the truth. The way is the truth. And he's saying, I'm that. I'm representing that to you. And that's what Jesus means to me. So I teach my kids, we pray in Jesus' name. I love Jesus, but I don't think you have to say Jesus to be saved. Christ said, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, is going to enter into the kingdom of heaven. It's not about a particular name. It's about a way of life. It's about the truth. It's about being honest, in my opinion. And that is very heresical for...
Yeah, your followers are going to love that.
The Christian church is devout.
So they could throw their stones at me and I would understand it. I won't even be offended because I understand that mindset because I was in it a few years ago. So people can say I've fallen away or I've lost my way or whatever else. I'm in a kind of nuanced place, and a wise man once said, tyranny is the deliberate removal of nuance. And that's what I think is one of the hang-ups with religion.
Boots in the dust, smoke in the air, echoes of a shotgun